It's all good news. I'm Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, November 6th.
Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, essential data for outdoor people, all the time, no hype.
Be sure and smash the like and subscribe button. Ring the bell. You get automatic notifications when the videos are posted, typically on Sunday evening. All right, let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. First, we'll check the buoys. Real quick, up in Northern California, Half Moon Bay, we're looking at all the energy from way up to 30-second period energy all the way down to 5-second period wind chop. This would be like super energetic swell up here. And this is just pure garbage here. This is the amount of energy present in each of the period bands at that buoy. You can see a little bump of energy in around the 14-second range, another little bit of wind bump somewhere in about the 11-second range. Anyway, we got some formulas that go and crunch it all together. Primary swell, 5.4 feet at 11.7 seconds. That's right in somewhere in this area. With secondary swell, about 2.5 feet at 15 seconds. That's mainly coming from the south. The directions get a little bit confused. The larger swell coming from the northwest. Calculated surf heights, you can see the trend over the past couple of days, hanging somewhere around head high. Doing the same thing for Southern California, using buoy 191, Point Loma, South California, way down near San Diego area. Little bump of energy, southern hemi swell in about the 14-15 second range, with some wind bump all mixed in there. Pure swell, 2.4 feet at 15 seconds from 197 degrees, then lesser period energy there. Swell size calculated, chest high, something like that. This is the 5-foot range. Typically, we'd call that head high. So, chest, shoulder high, something like that at top spots. And then we go take a quick look at Waimea Bay, north shore of Oahu. Mainly just wind swell, very small energy, somewhere around the 9-second period range. 2.5 feet at 9.3 seconds from the east, 116 degrees. That's not a whole lot of surf, if anything, over on the north shore. What's that, thigh high or something? So that's kind of it for right now. The short of it is not a whole lot of swell in the water anywhere at the moment, but that will change shortly. Taking a quick look at significant wave heights in the North Pacific Ocean, we see a gale here in the northeastern Gulf of Alaska. It's pretty much off the Pacific Northwest in British Columbia right now, generating 24, 25-foot seas aimed due south. Swell from that is already hitting the Pacific Northwest. Pretty good size, also pretty bumpy, and likely doing the same thing down into North and Central California over the next day or so, with some energy seeping into Southern California. A little bit of sideband energy is forecast wrapping its way into exposed breaks on the north shore of the Hawaiian Islands. And this sort of gale here, really not doing anything, all energy aimed north, not in any of our forecast area. So next up, we take a look at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales, and when they form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, a dip in the jet. This is the Gulf of Alaska right here. You can see a clear dip right here being fed with, what is that, about 150, 60 knot wind, something like that. What that does is create sort of an eddy here, just off to the east of that trough, and that will create a counterclockwise flow aloft and down the ocean surface. That's the hallmark of low pressure. Of course, low pressure, if it's strong enough, generates winds. Winds, if they're strong enough, they get traction on the ocean surface and generate seas. Seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area, turns into swell. Swell, when hits your beach, turns into surf. So we have a little bit of potential here. You also see, so the jet flows from west to east off Japan here, then it kind of splits and gets fragmented and messed up here on the date line, then ridges hard to the north over the Bering Sea. When you get this ridging pattern like that, it does the exact opposite of there. You get a clockwise flow aloft and down at the ocean surface. That's high pressure, and high pressure, for all practical purposes, does not generate meaningful swell. Yes, it can generate wind swell out around its edges, but for the most part, it's pretty calm air. So here's our only hope for the moment. Let's put this into motion. As we get into Monday and then Tuesday, look at this trough just digging deep deep, deep, and it's not only going to generate some more winds and likely some more swell, but it's also going to produce weather working its way down over North California and then into the Sierra as we get into Wednesday and Thursday before that trough pushes inland. Another trough is forecast here. In fact, we go back in time. You can see it starting somewhere around Tuesday here over we'll say the Dateline region. It's not super defined, but then as we get into Wednesday, it starts pushing into the Gulf of Alaska, and it too has a pretty decent amount of wind energy pushing down into it. That should help create yet another bit of swell, and that trough continues almost into Northern California on Friday, and then we see yet potentially another trough setting up beyond that on Saturday and Sunday, pushing over into the northwestern Gulf of Alaska, and then almost filling the Gulf of Alaska as we get a week out on Monday. So things are looking much more like fall in the North Pacific, finally. So we made our best guesses based on the jet stream. Let's see what's actually forecast to happen down at the surface. Surface level wind, surface level pressure. See the isobars here, 1036 millibar high pressure. That's pretty high pressure sitting here in the Gulf, but just off to the east of it, low pressure, not very deep, but the gradient between the two of them is producing north winds. That is, when the isobars from high pressure and low pressure get close together, the isobars tighten up here, and that creates wind. We have 35 knot north winds pushing down the coast at the moment. There's also this little fetch of 45 knot south winds, but they're pushing up into the Aleutian Islands and are meaningless for our purposes. The low continues as we get into Monday the 7th and continues generating up to 30 knot fetch as we get into Tuesday the 8th of November, and then you can see the low literally pushing over the Sierra and inland. It's all over. But a new low starts developing off of Japan on Wednesday the 9th of November. You can see 45, almost 50 knot winds, then 55 knot winds late Wednesday night, continuing over the dateline. This is looking to be the first legitimate real gale of the season. Actually, it'd be a storm because it has 50 knot winds. More than 50 knot winds is considered a storm. Pushing over the dateline as we get into Thursday, then Friday, and then fading off in the Gulf of Alaska. But another gale starts building right behind that off Kamchatka on Saturday, the 12th of November. Not as strong as it appeared in previous model runs today, kind of falling apart as we get into Sunday, the 13th of November. And then this is all brand new right here. A week out on Monday the 14th, a broad gale forecast developing off the Kuril Islands. And notice some tropical, we'll call it spurious tropical activity because I don't believe the GFS model on any sort of a tropical system a week out, but certainly something to keep your eyes on. So next up, significant wave heights. These are waves generated at sea by winds. We're going back to Friday, the 4th of November. We're looking here in the Northern Gulf. Just a quick examination, that little gale that started developing. 26-foot seas were modeled, but most of this was all out of even the Northern Cal, at least relative to San Francisco. Shadowed and really only functional for generating swell for the Pacific Northwest. But today on Sunday, the gale started falling south, producing 24-foot seas. And let's see, we can get, there's today the latest update, the 18Z run. You can see clearly in the North and Central California swell window. Now let's look at the models going forward. This is what is considered hindcast data, the best guess at what's actually happening without, and I think there's actually some satellite data packed in there too, so the model's best guess. Now here's the projection by the computer moving forward. The hindcast for today, 18Z. As we move into Monday, the gale continues to fall down the coast and moving towards California with 26 seas slowly fading to 20 and 21 feet and still there in about the 20-foot range. Actually, we could probably pull it up here. 21.1 feet. So right there. And then falling south, actually moving a little bit, just barely. We actually went and calculated the swell angle. And I think some of this 18, 19-foot seas are on about the 290 degree track into Southern California. So perhaps some swell for everybody along the California coast. And believe it or not, even sideband energy, you can see the arrows here, sort of spreading out towards the Hawaiian Islands, and really small swell. We're talking, 2 foot or something like that at 12 seconds, something waist-high kind of surf thing on exposed north-facing shores, but swell nonetheless. But relative to Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast, as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, a much more interesting system, as we saw previously, is forecast, generating fetch, getting traction on the ocean surface, with seas building to, well, we'll look at it right here, 42 feet on Thursday, and then pushing over the date line into the Gulf of Alaska, still with seas in the 40-foot range, then fading pretty quickly as we get into Friday. The net result, some decent semi-long period energy forecast for the Hawaiian Islands and the U.S. West Coast. And then another gale behind that with 24-foot seas pushing over the dateline as we get into next weekend, fading out pretty quick, but still that's good for Hawaii. And then we know, now you can't really see it here, but we know fetch is building. It takes fetch 6 to 12 hours blowing on the ocean surface to really start generating some seas, not even fully developed seas, but just seas. And we know the winds are strong, and we would expect, assuming the long-range GFS model is correct, that seas will increase off the Kuril Islands and probably push over the dateline. But again, that's more than a week out. Confidence exceedingly low at this time. Looking at local winds, California here. San Francisco here, Point Conception there. Hawaiian Islands, where are they hiding? They're down here somewhere. Oh, there they are. They're off the chart a little bit. Okay, we'll zoom out just a bit. There we go. So we can see both California and Hawaii. So theoretically, according to the model, trades pretty good, 15 knots or so on over the Hawaiian Islands. And a light, generally speaking, wind pattern along the California coast. That was right before sunset. But as we get into Monday, well, the front starts dragging south. Northwest winds about 15 knots for north of Point Conception. Trades continue for the Hawaiian Islands on Monday. And then we get into Tuesday, the core of the low pushing over north and central California, southwest winds at 20-25 knots into central California. Probably a pretty sloppy mess. Trades continue for the Hawaiian Islands at 15 knots. We get into Wednesday, the low starts disintegrating over California, some sort of an onshore westerly flow, 5 knots or so, something like that. Lighter trades for the Hawaiian Islands. So we get into Thursday, a lighter wind regime sets up for California. North winds, 10 knots, something like that. Trades pick up a little bit. You can see high pressure here just north of the Hawaiian Islands. Trades about 15 knots, something like that. As we get into Friday, now another little spurious low is forecast off the coast. South winds at 10 knots or so early. Trades for the Hawaiian Islands. And then those south winds start building, especially north of the Golden Gate at 20 knots, 15, 20 knots, even 30 knots up into Cape Mendocino. So we get into Saturday, the same sort of deal. South wind regime probably down to about the Golden Gate, something like that. And light wind south of there. Trades for the Hawaiian Islands. We get out into Sunday, same sort of a deal. Local weather pattern just continuing. Trades for the Hawaiian Islands. We go out to the end of the model run almost Monday morning, and really no particular change forecast. So a bit of weather still for the California coast, but every bit counts. We'll take it. Looking at precipitation potential for California. California right there, San Francisco Bay Area there, Point Conception, Southern California down there. You could already see rain from the low starting to push into Cape Mendocino. This is on Sunday evening. Rain getting pretty hard through the evening as we get into even before sunrise. Heavy snow forecast for the Sierra. Rain the whole way down to Morro Bay, sweeping south and continuing down the whole way into nearly San Diego. Pretty light rain. Snow continuing for the Sierra, and then rain along the coast. As we get into Tuesday, much the same. A second pulse setting up, probably colder air getting entrenched there. More snow for the Sierra. Look at that. Pretty hard snow, and rain the whole way down into the Baja. So a much needed bit of weather and rain and snow that will certainly put an end to whatever fire season was left. As we get into Wednesday, still more snow lingering over the Sierra, but rain starts breaking up generally for most of California. Thursday, things dry. As we get into Friday night, early Saturday, another low now forecast. This wasn't on the maps or didn't look nearly as good even this morning. Suggests rain again pushing down to almost Morro Bay, light snow for the Sierra. And then as we get into Sunday, more low pressure off the coast, mainly affecting, we'll say, Northern California, Cape Mendocino, maybe down to Point Reyes. We'll see whether any of this happens. It's pretty light, and this is pretty new on the charts. Snow forecast dashboard for Squaw Valley, Palisades, Tahoe. Out of this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, wet mess event, it looks like 32 inches. We can actually click on it here, get the exact details. Okay, 34 inches, and then a little bit more, almost a week out, getting us to 37 inches of snow. That's pretty good, and we'll take it. Freezing level slowly working its way down theoretically to about 1,000 feet. The blue is hard freeze. The white is between the white and the gray line here. The gray is slush, so 32 degrees right there. You can see it dropping in elevation, so down pretty low. Then things rebound on the 10th and the 11th a little bit. So this is the base of Squaw. This is the top of Squaw. So, a little bit of slush or not hard freeze the whole way to the top for a little bit right before sunrise on the 11th, and then temperatures dropping again, possibly a little more precip. Then slowly temperatures start rising, freezing level up to about 10,500 feet 10 days out, but again, confidence very low, so we'll see. But certainly this area right here in terms of temperature and in terms of snowfall looks good. Winds, a little bit of an issue over higher elevations. Rough guess, maybe gusts in the 70 knot range, something like that. But there is snow on the ground there. Not enough to ski on, but with all this certainly should be enough to get the greens and some of the easy blues open whenever they are ready, personnel-wise, equipment-wise. They're still working on lifts. There's all kinds of stuff going on at Squaw, so we will see how that all plays out. Sugar Bowl pretty much in the same situation, 38 to maybe 42 inches of snow, that sort of thing. We'll check it here. 43 inches, all right. And Kirkwood in on the action too, about 44 inches of snow. Let's go check Mammoth. And Mammoth fully in on the action too, with probably about 40 or 41 inches. This is a significant improvement from this morning's run of the models for Mammoth, suggesting that the front is supposed to make better progress down into the southern Sierra. This is really good news. All right, let's go take a look long term. What's going on with the Madden Julian Oscillation, that periodic weather oscillation that crosses the Pacific? Takes about 6 weeks to do it, something like 6 to 7 weeks, something like that. And then the longer term weather factor, the El Nino Southern Oscillation, ENSO. We'll talk details on both. We're looking for signs of the active phase of the MJO. There's two phases to the MJO, active and inactive. Active phase on one side of the planet, inactive phase on the other. They rotate west to east, diametrically opposed to each other around the planet. It's the active phase we're interested in when it pushes over the Pacific, moving into the West Pacific. It's effectively a low pressure system. What that does, it stomps on the trades and reduces trades, if not out and out reversing them, also imparting energy to the jet stream. When that happens, when you have a more energetic jet stream, you have better potential for storm production, therefore swell production, and also precipitation. As the active phase, and it moves on the equator from west to east, as the active phase pushes south of California and or Hawaii, then it also drags weather with it. So your highest odds of precipitation and storms are when the active phase is either south of Hawaii, if you live in Hawaii, or south of California. Something to be aware of. Also, the reversal of trade winds when the active phase is over the West Pacific. We call it the Kelvin wave generation area, because when it's over there, and if it's strong enough, and if it reverses 12 trade winds, it can then also take warm water that's in the far West Pacific, typically driven there by the trades that blow east to west. Because it reverses crosses the trades, it takes that warm water, starts pushing it off to the east, not on the surface, but underneath the equator. It takes about 3 months for that ball of warm water known as a Kelvin wave to make it the whole way across the Pacific. It eventually slams into the Galapagos in Ecuador, erupts to the surface, and creates a warm water pool there off Ecuador. If you get successive active phases of the MJO and successive Kelvin waves, that can help usher in El Nino. All right, so right now we're looking at data from the TAO buoy array, series of buoys strung across the equator used for monitoring El Nino, but they also have wind sensors on the buoys. The arrows are wind direction speed. The longer the arrow, the stronger the wind. So strong east trades in the East Pacific. Over the Central Pacific, this is like Hawaii, about 158 west, something like that. Strong east winds there. And over the all-important Kelvin wave generation area, that's New Guinea there, the equator's right there. Dateline 180 west right there. Strong east winds. But it's not the actual wind speeds, it's the anomaly, the difference from normal for this time of year. Yeah, winds are typically pretty strong out of the east over the Pacific this time of year. We're looking at these arrows. They're not nearly as strong. So just weekly east anomalies in the East Pacific, weak east anomalies over the Central Pacific, and we'll call it modest, not even moderate, modest east anomalies over the Kelvin wave generation area. This is still probably signs of the inactive phase of the MJO, but not very strong at all. Let's go take a look at the forecast looking a week out. Here's zonal wind anomalies, just the east-west component of the wind for the whole planet. The blues are easterly anomalies. Think of that as like the inactive phase. Reds and yellows, westerly anomalies. Okay, think of that as the active phase of the MJO. The date line runs right up the middle of the chart, 180 west. Far west Pacific is about 135 east, something like that. So the Kelvin wave generation area, the area we're really interested in, because that's where all the magic happens. When the active phase of the MJO moves over the west Pacific, the Kelvin wave generation area, one, it can create Kelvin waves, and two, that's where it probably does its best to impart energy to the jet stream. So right in this area here, what do we see? Well, we see westerly anomalies, sort of a mix of east and westerly anomalies in the Kelvin wave generation area. And look at that, getting lighter and lighter as we go through the week. But easterly anomalies building in a little pocket on the date line. This is actually the best we've seen it in, I don't know, a year or two maybe. Certainly in the past 6 months. This is actually what we were alluding to in the title of this video, that good things are coming. We've been talking about a significant change setting up. This is the first sign that that change is in fact starting to happen. We're going to get more into this in a couple of minutes. Let's go look 2 weeks out. Outgoing long wave radiation. Fancy words for cloud cover. Since the active phase of the MJO is a low pressure system, well, low pressure systems typically generate clouds. The blues are more cloudy than usual. The reds and yellows, less cloudy than usual. That'd be high pressure, inactive phase. This would be the active phase. All right, let's get ourselves oriented. South America, Central America, Hawaii, equator, right there, EQ, running across. 180 west, that's the date line. Kelvin wave and New Guinea there, Australia, you get the idea. Kelvin wave generation area, right in here from 170 west to about 135 east, 5 degrees north and south of the equator. Looks like the active phase of the MJO moving east and out of the Kelvin wave generation area. The inactive phase building over the maritime continent 5 days from now, moving over the Kelvin wave generation area, but then quickly dissolving, this per the statistic model, 10 days out, and 15 days from now, 2 weeks from now, the active phase weekly setting up again. The dynamic model paints the exact same picture. The two models are in sync. Looking at the last panel here, this is all good news. We'll take it. Zonal wind anomalies from the GFS model. That's kind of new stuff. We just ran into this site, I don't know, it was a couple of weeks ago, and it's pretty nice. Equator right here. This is the far west Pacific, New Guinea right there. This really should go over about another 10 degrees, but we'll take what we can get. Ecuador, the Galapagos right here, that's the equator. The reds and oranges are westerly anomalies. We like seeing as much red as possible. The blues, easterly anomalies. So we go out in time, we have this westerly wind anomaly pattern, forecast holding, and then starting to break up, and it's only 5 degrees north and south of the equator that we're really interested in. By Friday, the 11th of November, easterly anomalies start building again. Notice that westerly anomalies holding over the far East Pacific, but then even that starts fading out. But notice Even off of Peru, westerly anomalies continue. Easterly anomalies pretty much holding on the equator after that in the West Pacific out till November 22nd, but not nearly as strong as what they have been for weeks and months past. A quick look at phase diagrams for the two models. Statistic here, dynamic model here. The MJO moves from west to east around the planet, from the Indian Ocean over the maritime continents like Bali, to the West Pacific, to the East Pacific, under the United States, across the Atlantic, this is on the equator, and then over North Africa, back to the Indian Ocean. Where the heavy dot is where the active phase of the MJO is today. This is per the 5th, that would be Saturday of November. The further the dot is away from this circle, the stronger it is. So a modest active phase in the East Pacific, forecast tracking to the maritime continent very weak, 2 weeks from now. The dynamic model suggests no, the active phase actually making it back into the West Pacific and building to modest strength 2 weeks from now. So this is certainly an outcome that we would like to see. We'll see how this all plays out. Either one of these models is certainly pushing things in the right direction. Maybe a little bit of a downturn with the inactive phase for the next week or so, but then beyond that, maybe we're back in business. Here's the upper level model. It is a statistic model showing areas favorable for precipitation. That would be the areas in green. This runs about a week ahead of what's happening at the surface. So, and it goes out 40 days, 5 days per panel. South America, Central America, Hawaii, right about there. 0 is the equator, the date line roughly there. New Guinea there. Kelvin wave generation area right there. So this suggests the yellows is dry air, the inactive phase of the MJO. So right now, inactive phase starting to set up over the Kelvin wave generation area, holding for until November 16th, and then a little bit of wetter air starts developing over the Kelvin wave generation area, holding through the end of the model run, December 16th. But the general lack of dark colors here suggests a very kind of weak, undetermined pattern, neutral, but at least it's not strongly inactive as it has been for 2 years. This is part of that change we've talked about that we've been hyping for a while now. It is materializing. All right, the CFS model going out 1 month. This version of the model has been just persistently, doggedly suggesting the inactive phase of the MJO just holding and just not giving up any ground. Well, we're happy to report that has changed. All right, so let's look at the pattern in the past. So this is past activity. Again, the whole planet on one chart, the date line running right through the middle here, the far West Pacific, starting about 135 east, so right here. This is past performance down here. The dotted contour inactive phase, another active phase. This is in August time frame. A generally weak MJO pattern. East anomalies, the blues, just doggedly persistent over the date line and filling the entire Kelvin wave generation area to right about here, which is, well, that's even 120 east. But notice as we got into October, westerly anomalies tried to make little bits of an impact. They gave up today, according to this, westerly anomalies the whole way across the Kelvin wave generation area with a weak flavor of the active phase in control. But look at this. Westerly anomalies, yeah, they're supposed to retreat a little bit, but they don't give up completely. This is 150 west here. This is halfway across the Kelvin wave generation area. And westerly anomalies or neutral anomalies holding from today now for the next month. Easterly anomalies relegated to roughly the dateline area and looking in general weaker than they have and less dense and less, less coverage than what they've had, suggesting perhaps a change is setting up. And then the CFS model going out 3 months. This is the forecast up here, past performance down here. Dateline running right up the middle. Kelvin wave generation area starts about 135 east, so right here. So this is what's been happening in the past. The blues are easterly anomalies, the yellows and oranges westerly anomalies. They were all relegated outside of the Kelvin wave generation area until we got into about mid-October. And just like what this model said months ago, a little bit of a foray of westerly anomalies building into the Kelvin wave generation area, just as it is today. Easterly anomalies trying to show up a little bit around November 14th, but you can see the line of where the easterly anomalies filling the Kelvin wave generation area. Here's the line where westerly anomalies could not get past. So we got to mid-October, that line started creeping off to the east. And if you just follow it, as we get maybe about 2 weeks from now, even a week from now, that's going to make, that line will get the whole way to the date line. And after that, easterly anomalies never get back west of the date line after that. Now, this is not as marked a huge change as what we saw in the model earlier, but still, the trend is quite clear. Westerly anomalies, or at least neutral anomalies, taking over half to almost the entire Kelvin wave generation area as we get into, we'll say, maybe around mid-December, and certainly as we get into January, it is looking like the demise of La Nina. Let's overlay the MJO. Now, the MJO, we don't see clear signs of strong active phase development. The solid contours here, that's the active phase. It's over the Kelvin wave generation area today. The inactive phase comes behind it in, we'll say, November 14th to about the 25th of November. But westerly anomalies, which aren't supposed to be there, are there. And then another little weak active phase holds, and another weak inactive phase, and the westerly anomalies just keep creeping off to the east, getting more and more coverage in the Kelvin wave generation area, if not filling it. Now, last week we had easterly anomalies starting to build over the maritime continent. That would have been a clear El Nino indicator, if you will, but that's not showing. It was here 2 days ago, but yesterday it started fading. Nonetheless, the westerly anomaly thing is the thing that we really want to see, and the fading of easterly anomalies in the Kelvin wave generation area. Now let's talk about this just a little bit more. Notice, one, the jet stream is strengthening right now. We have storms forecast. We have precip forecast into California, and it's very interesting how that perfectly coincides with the building of westerly anomalies over the Kelvin wave generation area only about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. The suggestion here is that as the westerly anomalies creep east, they will continue to impart energy to the jet stream, and our odds for storm production over the Pacific, not only driven by the westerly anomalies, but also the change in seasons and temperature and all these dynamics working together to help get us maybe into a semi-more normal winter weather pattern. All right, and then finally, we overlay the low-pass filter, the low-pressure, high-pressure bias. We've been talking about this before. The dotted contour here is a high-pressure bias. This is the La Nina indicator. It's still pretty much locked, filling, we'll say, half the Kelvin wave generation area. But notice the second contour fades out December 8th, something like that. Previous model runs had it even later than that, so it's giving up. And then the westernmost edge or perimeter of the high pressure bias steadily starts moving off to the east, reaching, what is this? So somewhere almost to the date line at the end of the model run, February 3rd. The low pressure bias, the El Nino indicator, which has been locked over the maritime continent for 2+ years now, see it slowly. Well, today its leading edge is at about 125 east, so not even, just barely in the Kelvin wave generation area, but you see it steadily working its way off to the east. At the end of the model run, it is to be filling half the Kelvin wave generation area. That's February 2nd. Even as we get into mid-January, all this means is this is reinforcement. This is actually what's driving those westerly anomalies starting to move into the Kelvin wave, is the low pressure bias sort of nudging itself off to the east, or the interaction of the westerly anomalies and the low pressure bias sort of drag each other into the Kelvin wave generation area, setting us up again for a better, hopefully more normal winter pattern for the Pacific, and possibly the demise of La Nina. All right, so that's the atmospheric component. What's going on in the ocean, right? It's the atmosphere and the ocean working together. When they get synced up and they both are moving the same way, then we are either moving towards La Nina or towards El Nino or leaving one or the other. Right now, though, we don't see a whole lot going on in the ocean for the moment. The winds have not changed over the Kelvin wave generation area long enough and with enough velocity to really make any difference in the ocean just yet. We're looking at data from the TAO buoy array, that series of buoys strung across the equator used for monitoring El Nino. The buoys, these are literally these X's. These are the anchor lines on the buoys. The X's are individual sensors that are strung on the anchor line. They collect temperature data down into the ocean. We're looking for Kelvin waves. Kelvin waves are those balls of warm water that travel from west to east under the ocean, eventually erupting in the east, and can help usher in El Nino. All right? You read the data here, you apply a model to fill. Notice there's big gaps here between the anchor lines, and you get a profile of what the warm and cold water is doing in the Pacific. So we see the 28-degree isotherm right here at about 176 east. It was back at about 173 a couple days ago, maybe even a week ago, so it's not moving a whole lot. The 26-degree isotherm, I think it was back about 158. It's moving off to the east some, creeping some, suggesting warm water starting to move. The 24-degree isotherm, I think it was right around 120 last week, something like that. So no big change. But again, it's not the actual temperatures. It is the anomalies, the difference from normal for this time of the year. Clearly, we can see plus 3 degrees. This is centigrade, so that's like 5 or almost 6 degrees Fahrenheit. Warm water, the dividing line right here, what's that? 150 west. So no real change from last week. Warm water in the west, cold water in the east, brick wall in between, and not moving. A different model suggests, a higher res model will say, suggests the temperatures are actually far warmer in the west and a bit cooler in the east, but still the same dynamic. A brick wall right about 150 east. When we see this starting to move, well, that would be a very good sign, but we'll know whether that's going to move before it actually starts moving, because you'll start seeing westerly anomalies building in strength over the West Pacific. Or the other way to say it, you'll see easterly anomalies in the east starting to lose velocity, and then this giant bowl of water will just start bleeding off to the east. But we're not there yet. And yet another way to view the dynamic, sea level anomalies, the sphere of the ocean. Take out the wind waves, the swell, even the tides, and is the sphere of the ocean higher or lower than normal? So here's Chile down here, Peru, Central America, Mexico, United States, Hawaii there, equator there, date line there. These are centimeters, minus 15 centimeters. Cold water at depth contracts. It'll create a divot on the ocean surface. Warm water expands. It'll create a bump on the ocean surface. If you have stronger than normal trades here, well, that'll scoop out water too. So you clearly see minus 15 centimeter anomalies off of the Galapagos here. This is actually holding about steady for the past couple of weeks. The dividing line somewhere right around here, about, what is that, 150? About 150 west, something like that. And then all the warmer water balled up, or this is actually positive anomalies, sea heights higher than normal, driven by the strong trades piled up here. But remember, we're looking at the models, we're looking at actual data, and the hint is westerly anomalies are building in this area, not strong, but the easterly, and there is no easterly anomalies. The thought is some of this water is going to start moving off to the east pretty soon. Now the question is, how much, how quick, and how soon? Upper ocean heat anomalies. This is the West Pacific here, East Pacific here. Time, we're going back a year, November 2021. Kelvin wave. This is the reds and oranges, warm water. The blues, cold water. The dividing line, where is that? 150 line. Well, okay, this is about 155 right there. You can see this is not particularly any different. If anything, this cold water is pretty well entrenched at the moment. Okay, one Kelvin wave back around Christmas time last year made it across the Pacific. Took 3 months, December to, what is that, mid-March, something like that. Cold water upwelling phase, another Kelvin wave pushed across in the April-May time frame. Didn't even make it to Ecuador, stalled. Cold water upwelling, La Nina's revenge. notice the water temperature is building stronger and greater in aerial coverage the longer we go into this pattern. So we think a dam is going to break at some point, or at least a moderation of this cold water, and we'll look for that in a second. All right, here's where things get interesting. Sea surface temperature anomalies. Is the ocean colder or warmer than normal for this time of year? And this whole thing has been unchanged, locked in stone for 2 years now. South America here, Central America, the blues colder than normal temperatures. Ecuador, the Galapagos right here. You can look at it and you just see cold water filling the equatorial Pacific. The classic La Nina signature with warm water all around it. But it's funny how this works, but it's just 5 degrees north and south of the equator. That's all that really matters. I say that, but then I'm going to sort of double back. The thing that's become real obvious looking at this is, yeah, right on the equator, things are still pretty cold. But this area right down in here, down to 20, 25 degrees south, this was much colder even a week ago, and there's been this steady sense that something's happening in this area. You know, officially NOAA says 5 degrees north and south of the equator, from 120 west to 170 west. That's the Nino, what they call the Nino 3.4 region. That's the official El Nino monitoring region. But look at all this cold water that's down 5, 10, 20, 25 degrees south of the equator. That has some impact on global circulation as well. And all this, it appears, is warming. Okay? Still cold right here, but actually this isn't even as cold as it was a week ago. So this is the past 7-day sea surface temperature trend. And neutral is green. 0 to half a degree is yellow. Half a degree to 1 degree is orange. And you can see that same thing. Chile, Peru, warming all down here, the whole way across the Pacific. And we haven't really been looking at this down in here too closely. We've been focused on the cold or the warm right in this narrow little area. But seeing this has got to make one believe, if this trend continues, that it is a softening of the cold water trend that has been just locked over, and perhaps a slight demise of La Nina. We'll see. It's only been, we'll say, a week that this has been occurring. Let's see if it goes for another week or even beyond that. And then again, the backed off view, you can see the warming in this area, and that, in our mind, is very good news. So what is the sea surface temperature anomaly trend? All right, we're looking at the Nino 1.2 region. This is the area right there, 5 degrees north and south of the equator off of the Galapagos and Ecuador region. Well, it's just sort of toggling around down pretty cold. Minus 1.792 degrees today. A little bit warmer than it's been for the past couple of weeks, but still hovering in this zone from between about minus 1.8 to, we'll say, about minus 2.1 degrees. Kind of a noisy area. Then we look in the official El Nino monitoring region, the Nino 3.4 region, that area on the equator, 5 degrees north and south of California out to about the dateline. Temperatures bottomed out about 5 or 6 days ago, working their way up to minus 1.078 degrees. So still colder. The threshold for La Nina is a half degree. It's not even on the minus a half a degree. We're not even on the chart, but we're starting to work our way up. We think some of that warming that we saw in the previous charts is going to start showing up on this chart. The other thing to note is the long range forecasts suggest somewhere in about the November 15th range, the temperatures are going to be as deep as they're going to be, and then start a slow, steady upward trend from there. Maybe it's already happening, or maybe we're just a little too close to the data, but it wouldn't be surprising to see this start creeping up, especially when we see that broad expanse of down in the South Pacific, that's starting to warm, and we see the westerly anomalies over in the West Pacific. It just, again, we're way down in the weeds looking at a lot of detail, but the trend and this push towards just cold, steady, locked in cold water appears to be softening up from data that we're getting from a variety of sources. So what does the atmosphere think is going on? Well, we look at data, the Southern Oscillation Index, pressure data from Tahiti, which is in the Pacific, and Darwin, which is roughly in the Indian Ocean. When the index is negative, hey, minus 17.44, that suggests the active phase of the MJO setting up. When it's positive, then it's the other. It's like La Nina or inactive phase. Today's value, minus 17.44, and this is not much of a trend, but it's been negative 3 days. Looking back the past month, nary a negative reading to be seen. This is actually a step in the right direction. The 30-day average, plus 14.51. We really want this to be down around 0 or going negative. But you notice we've been 20, 21, and now we're down at 14.51. The 90-day average is at 14.28. Where has it been? Well, it's just hovering right around there. So this could just be some signs of the active phase of the MJO getting a little bit better footing. But with that combined with the building of westerly anomalies in the far west Pacific, and the models all saying they aren't going anywhere. If anything, they're going to grow in aerial coverage. And we're seeing other data that suggests that, well, sea surface temperatures are starting to warm, not in the core Nino 3.4 region, but all around the edges of it. And that's only started happening exactly in sync with westerly anomalies building in the West Pacific, and then the Southern Oscillation Index starting to go negative. This all is starting to suggest the early signs of a trend that's going to be moving in the direction that the models have been suggesting for months. Maybe it's really happening right now, and we can watch it and monitor it day by day, week by week. That's pretty cool. The 30-day SOI graphed out. Again, the 0 is neutral. When you're up here in positive territory, that's La Nina territory. When you're down in negative territory, that's El Nino territory. So we're still clearly in positive territory, but just the past week or so, you can see things starting to trend downward. We want to see more of that. We want to see this line start dropping, at least down somewhere around here, but we're not there yet. The atmosphere, some of it is changing, but not all of it yet, but it suggests perhaps a trend in the right direction. All right, we're running a little bit long here, so we're just going to get right to it. The official or the semi-official forecast for sea surface temperatures in the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region from the CFS version 2 model. Well, today we are somewhere in November, probably right around in here. Temperatures supposedly bottoming out at 1.05 degrees, somewhere in the next week or so. The data we're looking at suggests, well, maybe we've already reached that, and you can just see the trend from here forward. As we get into December, it's upward. By January, we're not quite at neutral territory. We're 0.7 of a degree below normal. By the time we get to about the first week in February, we are no longer sea surface temperature-wise in La Nina territory. We're in neutral territory, 0.5 degree below normal to 0.5 degree above. And the trend just working its way up from there as we get into the summer. So the suggestion is that temperatures are going to start warming in the ocean. At a minimum, right now, things are looking better. Jet streams waking up. A small gale forecast is developing in the northern Gulf. Not even really interested in that. Way more interested in the bigger one forecast for the dateline, was it starting Wednesday or so, pushing into the Gulf of Alaska with another one behind that and maybe another one behind that. Hey, it looks like winter swell is finally starting to happen. Now of way more interest, westerly anomalies, long time been forecast, are materializing, and none of the models are suggesting that they're going to dissipate or go anywhere for the next 3 months. If anything, they're going to build their coverage over the West Pacific and feed the jet stream yet more. Sea surface temperatures, not in the core on the equator, but around the edges, especially down south over a large area, are starting to warm up some. Not a lot, but a little bit. And the models all suggest, well, we're about as cold as we're going to get in the next week, and the trend is only upward and better from here. And all the data we're seeing so far suggests that's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, the real core is going to be we have to see sea surface temperature anomalies in the Nino 3.4 region start to go up. But that's supposed to happen starting about a week from now, and everything that we can see suggests that's exactly what it's going to go. So this is looking very good. The idea, again, is by the time we get into late January, early February sort of thing, the storm door might really open for real, and we'll get more storms, more precipitation into California. Yes, there's a good snowstorm forecast for the next week or so, but remember last year it did the same thing around Halloween. It just puked snow, and then we didn't get nary a drop until Christmas, and then it puked during Christmas, and then we didn't get anything until late February, and it did it one more time. Basically, we got 3 rain events all year, and that was it. Yes, officially speaking, it was a normal year. We got normal precipitation, at least from San Francisco northward, but it was all confined to 3 events. You really want it to be spread out more, so we'll see how this all works out. But at least right now, we're cautiously optimistic. But all the indicators are pointing in the right direction, and that's putting a smile on my face. All right, so that's it for this week. If you enjoyed the video, give us a thumb up. If you have any questions, let us know. Write in the comments there. We'll be sure to happy to answer. We get a lot of questions, and I spend a fair amount of time trying to honestly and constructively answer people's confusion, because I know a lot of this data is hard to get your head wrapped around. If you haven't, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, ring the bell, you get automatic notifications. And other than that, we're going to do this again next week, same time, same channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.